So I want to talk about building next-gen security tools with endpoint security APIs, but hello, MacDevOps. I was first here in 2019, and every one of you was very encouraging, and that's why I'm here back. You all gave me the confidence and the courage to come up here and fumble, so maybe I can pass that along someday. Pay it forward. As is customary, here's my Who Am I slide. I run my own consultancy, Orchard Labs. I do a lot of Mac OS agent systems development, low-level development, and do OS query development and consulting. Speaking of OS query, some of you may know me from my work there. I'm a contributor, committer, maintainer, and a TSC member focused on macOS, obviously. And my first commit was in 2015, so it's been a long time. And I got hooked. Or maybe it's just Stockholm Syndrome, and I'm in denial. Alistair was asking me, like, where do I point fingers? Things are broken. So here, one of the fingers, you can point it here. I'll work towards it. Previously, I've been at engineering roles at Fleet and Trail of Bits, but most importantly, where am I? And I don't mean it in philosophical sense because we can go all day on that. Here are my socials, like and subscribe, follow for follow. I don't know what's trendy these days, but I mostly hang out in OS Query Slack, so come talk to me. I love to chat, so yeah. So agenda. There is no agenda. And before Matt throws me off stage, I have something. I have a vision. So here's the vision. No, not this, not this. You'll have to wait. You'll have to wait for that one. Here's the vision. Why build your own security tooling? I'll try to convince you of all that, but you're all the builders here. So I want to talk about how one might build a tool, how to build one with endpoint security, and I'll show you a demo of one small tool I built. So why build, right? I hope it doesn't need more convincing because I looked at all the talks like Brandon and Ryan working on Cavret, Joel doing the awesome mesh WireGuard thing for MDM, Noah building cashless auto package, Sam building the OS Query extension, Henry doing cool stuff with Terraform, and Calvin building like nano MDM, micro MDM migration. So why build, right? You have OS Query, and done. Well, my bias is there, so maybe any other open source software or any commercial software. And I think that is a good first step, a great first step, and it's a foundation. But if that works for you, great, but often it doesn't. Often things change, landscape change, organizations change, and I think building is a way to kind of bridge that gap and stay on top of things. It's a rapidly changing landscape, and I found this photo or poster right outside. So SFU would like to remind us that this is not just a laptop, it's a target. I agree. Every laptop is a target. So with the changing landscape, we have changing organizations. DevOps is now DevSecOps. Whether you like it or not, yeah, it's happening. Security teams are looking more and more like software teams, and if you like watch other keynotes, like Werner Vogel's at AWS said, security is everyone's business, which I agree with. And with changing orgs, our devices are changing. Yeah, macOS has changed. We were just chatting about it at lunch. Sorry about all the wall of text of acronyms in tech, but I want to get that point across. The rate of change is increasing, so my question is, are we keeping up? Are the tools we are using keeping up? Because malicious actors are certainly keeping up. Threats haven't died down. Security is still very much a pain. That's why we are all here. And looking at the threat landscape, this was just 2022 on macOS. Huge thanks to Patrick Wardle for making all samples available, by the way. There are some interesting bits here, like 2023, we had the 3CX and the lock bit. 3CX was interesting. It's now the code signature is revoked, but it was a validly code-signed notarized app. But it took over libffmpeg, which does transcoding of video and audio. And so, yeah, it was a malicious, hijacked open source library. Keystill also hijacked on a legitimate app and stole your keychains. VPN Trojan tricked users into installing profiles and grabbed network packets. Crate depression took over Rust crate. And PyMafka typo squatted the package name and yeah, got into your system. Speaking of quickly changing landscape, this was a tweet by Microsoft just yesterday. I'm going to read that out. Microsoft has detected increased credential attack activity. And the credential attacks use a variety of password spray, brute force, and token theft. This is still a problem. And along with changing landscape, our policies are changing. We have declarative style. We heard about this yesterday. We used to do imaging, and then imaging was dead, and then imaging got resurrected. So things are always changing. And I think building tools is one way to keep up. Building tools is one way to learn. And more importantly, it's fun. You get to learn. You get to come up here and share, and it's also empowering. So that's my call to action. Please build stuff. All right, let's get to building. Endpoint security. It's a topic that's close to my heart, and I can go all day on it. What is endpoint security? It's a C library. So if you start building with this, you'll need some C family of languages, C++, Objective-C, Swift, Objective-C++, don't get scared away. There were these three things that were kind of existing in various versions of macOS with various levels of support. So KAuth was the kernel authorization framework. It came out in 2004. That was one way to get info on file events, but you had to write kernel code. It got deprecated in 2007. MACAF is the mandatory access control framework borrowed from trusted BSD. It has hooks into the kernel. You get events on process creation, memory mapping, all sort of cool stuff. And it shipped with sources in some kernels and even showed up in kernel debug kits. Remember those? But it was very much a buy Apple, for Apple thing, and if you tried to program against this, it was a huge pain because you're writing kernel level code. If there's a bug, it's going to crash. You usually need 2 computers or a VM. And writing kernel level code introduces new security issues, which we don't want. So endpoint security innovation kind of lagged behind on macOS, which kind of sucked. But 2019, Catalina comes along, and this new endpoint security framework comes along. It kind of unifies and ties this together in a nice C library API. You write user space code, so no more kernel panics if you are off by 1 or have a null pointer somewhere. And funnily enough, OS Query version 1 had a kernel driver that was in beta, but Facebook also realized it wasn't the path forward, it didn't really work, and kind of backtracked from it. There's a caveat here. Using endpoint security would mean you'll need entitlements, which is a whole another topic, and you'll need code signing, and you'll need to jump through all the hoops. But it is a solved problem. It's do it once and you're done. And I've given a previous talk on it. I've written a blog post at Trello Bits on it. It's a little bit OS query specific, but the same principles apply. But if you get it done, it's done and it's nice. So let's revisit a problem. We have files on disk, tokens, keys, WireGuard profiles, etc. They could be AWS tokens, GCP tokens, or in some cases, Oracle tokens. We want an audit of who opened these files, right? Because intuitively, we have an idea. Like, my private SSH key should only be used by SSHD and maybe Git and no other processes, right? Intuitively, we have an idea. My AWS token should not be run in a script. It should be probably by AWS CLI or an SDK. My 1Password keychain, if some process other than 1Password is opening it, that's a problem. So it can be any of these files that we want to take care of, and we want to audit of these open files. And optionally, we want to tie the opening of these files to policies. Now, what are these policies? Like, that depends on you, your threat model, your organization. You can have some barometer that, oh, you match, you passed, okay, you can open this file, or you don't, sorry, you're denied. Like in the previous talk, like, it's a bouncer, you act as a bouncer, like, sorry, you don't make it in, you're not old enough yet. So unless you're on the list, you're not getting in. So this feels familiar, right? Some eagle-eyed people might remember a similar talk last year about how we kind of did this with open events last year. Yeah, we did that, but it was a fire hose of events. It was finding a needle in a haystack, and it had poor performance. But now Apple has given us muting APIs and muting inversion, which is awesome. This means we have laser-like control. I can say, this is the directory I want, or these are the file paths I want, and these are the policies it must act on. And we get events only on that, and there is no performance impact. It's very fast, very cool. We'll talk more about that. So we need two things, files and policies. Policies are basically how you can make allow or deny decisions. It can be any number of things. It can be, you can check the process parameters, like is it signed? Is it signed by the thing I expected it signed by? Is it notarized? Is it a platform binary? You can walk up the process tree. You can figure out whether launch delaunched it or who's the responsible process for it. You can check the presence or absence of certain environment variables, like the dylib library inject, or electron runners node, and eliminate a class of these kind of attacks. You can check the presence or absence of certain entitlements. Like if your program has an entitlement that bypasses library validation, there's something wrong with it. So I'm scratching the surface here, but you can tie these policies with like a sync server or your MDM or even your IDP. You can figure out like, hey, did the process create a new user? Is the user the one I expect the user to be? You can check on device settings, like is this the device that I expect it to be? Is the boot security there? Is it encrypted? Is it whatever? Really scratching the surface here. But this would depend on your needs and your organization's need. For this demo, I'm just gonna, so I have a demo app called Terminator. The top thing is the type of events I want. There are two kinds of events in endpoint security, notify and auth. Notify just notifies things, and auth allows you to pass those allow, deny decisions based on your criteria. So here, on the second thing, I have all the paths that I care about. I'm just going to try this. These are all the paths that I care about, and these are my policies. Like, oh, if it's signed by com.apple.cat, it's allowed to open. If it's signed by com.apple.pico, it's allowed to open. If you're opening in Vim, it won't be allowed. If it's com.google.chrome, I'm gonna allow it. So, and then this is a simple, should I allow this? What am I doing here? This is just taking a path of all the lists that I am interested in, and I have a map of all the signing identities. And if it matches, it returns yes, you should allow it if it contains in that map. So simple stuff. And here I'm just doing, just handling the message, and it passes through the auth type. And if I should not allow, I deny it. If it allow, I pass in the correct flags and approve the request. And there's some error handling there. This is the most important bit, though, the ES invert muting. This is the new API in Ventura that Apple introduced that solves a lot of my problems. This is very performant, and thanks to Apple for finally getting it in. This looks simple, but here's Apple's documentation on it. I'm very glad they documented this super in-depth, but here's something I've highlighted. I'm going to read it. The relationship between all three types of muting, process path, target path, and how each can be inverted is complex. That's Apple's wording. If you stare at this at 4 a.m., here's a top tip. Close your laptop, do it the next day, not worth it. Ask me how I know. So yeah, here's the demo, but before I start that, we have a new metric, beer level of development. Right? Instead of like t-shirt sizes or Fibonacci points in software development, we have beer level of development. But since this is C++, it has to be whiskey. And it was an integer overflow. Is this playing? Yeah. So here I have OS query modified with open events. I'm trying to show here like why we need the muting. So this is just running for like 10 seconds, and all I'm doing is selecting from ES process file events. And you can see it's a fire hose. You can even see like I'm doing screen capture here, and we have already 13,000 events. So managing all this, and if you're collecting everything, it's very painful. And this is why the new Ventura muting APIs are such awesome APIs to work with. And here I'm doing like, just open events, and there's like 4,000 events in like 30 seconds. So this is why we couldn't do it last year, and we can do it now. And Apple finally gave us what we needed. Okay, so enough of that. I'm just walking through the same code I showed you here. Like, these are the paths that I'm interested in. I have a directory called My Precious. It stores things that is precious to me. And here's the signing IDs that I like. You can, of course, do more complex policies and check on like parent path and code signing and notarization and anything. So, yep, this is my directory tree. You can see I can cat bees, and it's hello MacDevOps. And there's a good program called BAT, which does bees as well. I can cat the spells. Don't judge, I got into Harry Potter very late. So I'm still making my way through all the spells. And yep, let's compile it. Let's get this code signed, because yep, need to do that. And I'm gonna run Terminator, but only in monitor mode, so we can see what this looks like when we cat and open those files. So yep, again, just helpful info, like these are the paths that I'm monitoring, these are the events that I'm monitoring, and it's monitor only. So if I cat the bees, it's like, okay, signing ID is com.apple.cat, it's a platform binary, it's approved. If I use BAT, it's not a platform binary. Yeah, and that's the signing ID that has, and it runs from my homebrew folder. And this is like 200 lines of code. We can write it over a weekend with some whiskey. Yeah. So yeah, that's the best thing out of Ventura in my book. And this is, I was not kidding about it. This is actual Apple's header, ES client, and they walked through all the flowchart, and it's 100 line of comments going through like, hey, if this event is this type, if it's subscribed, if it's suppressed, if it's muted, if it's not muted, if it's inverted. It takes a little bit of time to kind of wrap your head around it, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's kind of, you have a good mental model and it makes it easier. And finally, you have deliver event. So let's get back to the Terminator. Yeah, let's just run this without monitor. Let's just get the ban hammer out. I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, yeah. So if I use cat, I should be able to allow it. Yep, approved. If I use bat, it's not on my list. It says denied. Bat says operation not permitted, OS error. So this is a way to kind of really lock down your things and the things that you care about on your machine. So yeah, if I use cat, it works. If I use bat, it doesn't work. And I just realized, you can start a war, so use this with care. Like if you deny Vim, half of the audience or half of the users are going to be mad. So I'm using Nano here, which is just Pico. Works great because it's on my allowed list. You can see the signing ID com.apple.pico, user bin Pico, and yeah, I'm using Vim here, and it says permission denied. And how do I quit Vim? Quit? Okay, there we go. No war, only love. And yeah, it works in user path, it works in whatever paths you want, because endpoint security needs TCC permissions, needs full disk access, so it doesn't matter. And that's my demo. Oh yeah, I made a backup. Quick OS query update. The file open events, the notify only, is coming to OS query, the one where you can target specific paths with the muting and the inversion. It's a work in progress. I'm working hard on it, so watch out for that in an upcoming release. And a huge thanks to Chris Long and Material Security for sponsoring that work in OS query. And that's my talk. Thank you.